So as a young girl living at home with my family, I was always very happy and felt very loved and grounded. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but you know, the most important thing was I felt loved. I never felt like anything was missing. I got on really well with my siblings and still do, got a really good relationship. But when I came to my late teens, I moved out of home and settled down. And a year before I got married, my dad got very ill. He'd start to say weird things, you know, and me and my family, we were just like, this isn't normal. He's acting very strange. So it kind of got worse as the time went on, to the point where one day he woke up extra early and went to work. We didn't think too much into it, but you know, my mum was like, oh, he's left, you know, home to go to work a little bit earlier than usual. That's a bit strange. And then when it got to the time for my mum to go and join him at work, the door was locked, and she tried to obviously unlock it, but the key was left on the other side of the door purposely so that she couldn't unlock the door. So then we started to panic, and my mum called the ambulance, because we had a flat above because we had a restaurant on the ground floor. And when, you know, the ambulance went up to the top, they saw he was unconscious. He'd taken an overdose. Obviously we then figured out that he'd planned the whole thing. After that he came around, but he wasn't himself, you know. He woke up like a different person. I just felt like I lost my dad at that point, but he was still alive, and it was just a really strange grieving process. You know, like grieving that person while he was still here. And I think that was one of the hardest things, to see him deteriorate. We tried everything. We had all sorts of different types of counselling. He did have to go into care homes at some point, because, you know, he became quite difficult to look after. He would be in bed all day and say that he hadn't slept for years. He'd have plates of dinner and say he hasn't eaten for years. My wedding day came, and the whole like week beforehand he was panicking, saying there won't be a wedding, what we're going to do, you know. He was just like, I'm going to make everybody ill. He thought his whatever he had was contagious, that his depression was contagious, and that just by walking past people they were going to get ill. So obviously this went on for years, 10 years down the line, and he just become very numb and had no emotions. I mean, he had so many grandchildren that he didn't know. Well, he knew obviously who they were, but there was just no connection there. And that was very hard, because he was a very affectionate person, always cuddling, and just had so much love. So, you know, to have him then be so cold was just heartbreaking. He then developed a chest infection, which he then had antibiotics for, and he was in hospital. And I remember getting a call from my brother saying, you need to come and see your dad now. He's in the intensive care unit. And I just knew, I don't know why, I just thought this is it. And I was about an hour's drive away, so I just rushed there straight away. And you know, I wasn't able to really speak to him. He was unconscious. So yeah, I kind of didn't really get to say goodbye. No, it was just a very surreal experience. He passed away from liver failure, which was really strange, because he never was an alcoholic or anything like that. So we think it's from a blood condition that he had, and from the years of taking medication, maybe that have been contraindicated to his blood condition. You know. So all of this that happened with my dad, then did give me a lot of strength, although I was very sad. But you know, as the time went on, it gave me strength, because obviously I had children of my own, and I saw what happened to my dad affect the whole family. So it affected his children, it affected his wife, and the whole family just broke apart. So I knew that I didn't want that for my family, my children. It just made me feel like I always need to stay strong no matter what. So I feel like it was preparing me for what was to come next. So I had a 5-year-old daughter, healthy, happy. I then got pregnant again with my second child, and I had them, you know, such a healthy pregnancy and an amazing birth. I had a water birth, which was amazing. And a couple of days after birth, you know, I was sent home on the same day of birth because I was deemed low risk, and everything went so smoothly. So when I was home, I had a midwife come to see me a couple of days later, and I had expressed to her that he was quite jaundiced, so he was very yellow in the skin, and he wasn't really feeding brilliantly, so I was a bit worried that he wasn't really getting enough milk. So a day later, it got to the point where his jaundice got even worse, and he became very lethargic. In the end, we rushed into hospital, and when I saw the paediatrician, he just looked at him and said, we're going to have to go into intensive care. He's going to need a double exchange transfusion and phototherapy. And all of this just didn't make any sense to me. I had no idea what he was talking about, and I was like, what does this mean? We just rushed to the neonatal unit, and they took him away from me, and they went to put a cannula in his hand. And at that point, I think the shock, like the pain and the shock of the cannula going into his skin, just made him, you know, collapse. And at that point I thought, oh my God, I've lost my baby. And my first thought was like, oh my God, what have they done to him? What have they done to my baby? And I just, after that, it was like a panic. Everybody was panicking around him, that he had to be resuscitated. And I felt an out-of-body experience. It was like I was watching myself, because it was just so unreal. Like, I couldn't believe it was happening to me. I felt like I was in a movie, and I could see everybody rushing around, and my husband was like, what have they done? What have they done to him? What have they done? And I was just like in utter shock. I didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. And you know, literally after that, we were all just waiting and waiting for hours to see what the outcome was going to be. Like, was he going to make it? I remember pacing up and down the corridors of the hospital, and nurses just kept coming to see me, and they couldn't really tell me anything. And you know, they just had sorry eyes, and I was just like, oh my God, this can't be happening. Family then came, and I had the priest come and pray, and I felt, even that felt like I was putting him to rest. It was just like I was in a real life nightmare. I really was. And then a few hours later, I then got called in to go and see him, and you know, I just broke down. I saw him just as a different person. He was in the incubator. He had his eyes were covered, and I'd never seen like so many tubes and cannulas coming out of every part of his body, and it was just like the biggest shock ever. And I just broke down. I was just like, oh my God, like, this can't be my baby, this just can't be. And I was just like praying to God that he was going to come around. So yeah, we were in intensive care for 3 weeks, and you know, every day I was just you know, waiting and waiting to see how he was going to be. He was having seizures, and I remember asking the doctor, well, I didn't ask, my husband asked, because he just needed to like prepare himself. You know, what do you think the outcome's going to be? And the paediatrician just said, you know, he just said so straight, he's going to be severely disabled. And you know, my husband, I wasn't really ready to hear it, but he felt like he had to ask. I hated the paediatrician at the time. I was like, how could he be so cold and so harsh and just tell us so straight like that? You know, I was just angry because that's not what I wanted to hear, and I didn't want to believe it. 3 weeks later, I remember feeling like scared to take him home, because I thought, well, you know, once he's off all the ventilators and all these things that were keeping him stable, what if something happened at home? Like, I was just so scared. I didn't want that responsibility in a way for anything bad to happen. And it was a very strange feeling again. Like, I felt like going home for the second time with my baby should have been a celebration. Like, you know, I'm back, we're recovered, we're all good and happy. But it was like, I'm going back home, but things are very different. Like, it's change. It was that weird change. Just not knowing what the future was going to be, and lots of things unraveled as time went on. I was then bombarded with so many different specialists, therapists, different hospital appointments. I literally knew the hospital in and out of, you know, my local hospital, Birmingham Children's hospitals, going all over the place to have all different kinds of tests to figure out, you know, how severe his brain damage was, MRI scans, like constantly having to give him medication to put him to sleep so he could have scans, and, you know, MRIs, EEG scans, ECG scans. It was just like everything. I just felt like I was torturing my child. I couldn't go home and then enjoy him and just take in everything that had happened. It was just like a whirlwind of like everything that followed through with what had happened. So yeah, it unraveled that he lost all of his hearing, so he's profoundly deaf. He lost his vision. He has cerebral palsy in all of his limbs. And I just remember searching the internet day in and day out to find a cure, to find something. It was just like, there has to be something. I was just clinging on to hope for my baby. As years went by, I then realised that I was in severe depression, and I think on reflection now I can see that, but at the time I was very strong. I wasn't at the point of depression where I was bedbound and I couldn't do anything. I had no choice but to carry on, because I obviously had 2 children. My husband went back to work, so, and I was obviously, these appointments kind of kept me going, because I knew I had to wake up and get out the house and get to these appointments for certain times. So in some ways it did help me, because I was forced to go and get out and do something. So in the end, I was diagnosed with something called PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, which means, you know, if you've been through a traumatic event in your life, it can affect you in your daily living. So for me, because I had a water birth, every time I had a bath, I would then think of the whole birth, of giving birth to my child, because that was when I felt I wanted to go back to that time, because maybe I could have changed things. In hindsight, obviously knowing what had happened, I kept replaying it in my head, thinking if only I could go back to that time and do everything all over again, and all these series of events I could change or do differently. And, you know, I was torturing myself, and going out to places, you know, would trigger things. So in the end, we tried to seek counselling, but there was like a year waiting list, and we needed help like now. We couldn't wait a year. You know, what if things got worse? I had a treatment called EMDR, which was amazing. I highly recommend it. It really worked for me. It's basically having to let your guard down, letting all the pain out and just reliving the whole event, which takes months to do. You know, you do it slowly, bit by bit, and it did take me a few weeks to actually let go, because I think you put a guard up to protect yourself. Your mind just says, no, 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 I can't do this. I can't go back there because it's too painful to talk about. You know, but it did really help me put it to one side and move forward and just focus on the now. So I do really, really recommend it. My son's now 8 years old and he's like the happiest boy ever. We did get some amazing news that he has got vision loss, but he's more visually impaired. So he's not completely blind, he can see things. His vision actually on a scan is normal because his eyes are completely healthy, and his ears are completely healthy, but what's been affected by the jaundice, you know, it got such high levels of jaundice, which is bilirubin, which is toxic blood, and it starts off at the shoulders and it goes down to the toes and then it comes back up again. But once it comes back up again to the shoulders, it will then carry on going back up, and that's when it breaks the blood-brain barrier, and that's when it can cause brain damage. So if you can imagine, like, you know, your blood is full of like toxic, there's no healthy blood cells in there with oxygen, there's no oxygen in the blood at that point, and it's spreading into your brain, so you don't know where exactly it's going to spread. So everybody that has brain damage from jaundice is slightly different. You don't know where it's going to be affected exactly, but you know, there's a common pattern of hearing loss always goes first, and then they have cerebral palsy, you know, generally. He has cortical visual impairment, which means the messages that go to the brain to tell the eyes what they see is affected. So it might have a very severe delay, so you might see me walk past the room, but he might not recognize that he's seen me walk past the room until a few minutes later. So that's kind of vision impairment that he has. As in regards to his hearing, when he was 1 year old, we decided that he was a great candidate for a cochlear implant, which is like a hearing aid, but it's quite a big procedure to have. So the implant is implanted inside the cochlea, which gives him sound. It gives him robotic sound, but because we did it at such a young age, you know, he doesn't really know any difference, so we just thought the earlier the better for him to get used to those kind of sounds and be able to recognize sounds. So then when he was 2, we then went on to do the second cochlear implant on the other ear. So now he does have bilateral cochlear implants, which has been amazing for him. It's opened up his world completely, because he was very jumpy and nervous if you ever approached him before he had sound, but now he loves music, he loves our voices, he loves everything about sound. Has just opened up his world, which has been a blessing. It really has been. You know, his mobility is probably the hardest thing to control. We try to control it with medication, injections, he's had to undergo lots of surgery, you know, but he really is an angel. I mean, he wakes up every day smiling. It's just such a happy boy, and I can honestly say I feel I've got an angel in my house, and that in itself is a blessing. I couldn't see it like that at the beginning because I was suffering with so much pain and anger and just questioning everything, like why me, why my child, why my family, why did it happen, what if, what, you know, just looking back all the time. But now I can happily say I'm at the point where I can share my story, talk about what's happened, and if I can help anybody, you know, that are going through similar experiences, which is why we wrote a book called My Little Spartan. which is, you know, just explaining what's happened and perspective on life and perspective on things, you know, struggles that you might go through, that there's always, you know, time is always a healer. And the reason that I'm doing this, I feel like it can help people share stories, share experiences, so that people don't feel alone. There's always going to be a time in your life that you're going to feel low, that you're going through struggles, and I think what's really difficult is when you feel alone or you don't know where to turn to. So to hear other people go through difficult times and they've come out, you know, stronger than ever, it really is inspiring and gives people hope and motivation. So that's the reason why I'm doing these lives, so that you know, I just feel like it's my way of giving back, sharing my experience with you all, because I feel people always feel like they need to have a purpose. They're searching constantly, you know, what is my purpose in life, and if I don't find it, then I don't feel happy, I'm not fulfilled. But I think everyone's purpose in life should be each day waking up and feeling grateful that you're here for another day. You can always find something to be grateful for, and just be happy and live in the moment, because if I sit and worry about what my future's going to be for my family or my children, I just will go mad. So I have to live for each day, and I've taught myself to do that, because if I don't, then I will be like curled up in a ball and crying and worrying constantly. I'll be a ball of anxiety. So I just have to live for the day, enjoy what I can, and that doesn't mean I'm perfect, you know, I'm far from, I have my low days, I have my days where I feel great, but that's just normal. We all have that. I just want to raise awareness for mental health, because it's just so important. People still don't really understand about it, and people don't know where to go, and this is just my way really of raising awareness, and raising awareness for disability as well, because it's such a wide, broad spectrum and so many brain injuries out there. I just want to connect with people. This is my way of giving back to you, and I hope it can help. And even if it just helps one person watching a live video, then that means a lot to me. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so, so much. Mwah.